Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is the implication of the election of President Obama on the African continent. And of course, we're fortunate to have with us to talk about the implication of President Obama's election on Africa, Dr. Leonard Madu. And of course, Dr. Madu, let me welcome you to the show this morning.
Thank you.
And to say, Dr. Madu, there is no way to introduce you to our audience in reference to the continent of Africa, because for the last 20 years, you've talked to us extensively about Africa, everything from the international slave trade up to Sudan and et cetera, and et cetera. So you, in a real sense, need no introduction. I would imagine that if they've seen anything on our show dealing with Africa, you were probably involved in it. And that's why we're so delighted to have you here this morning to talk about this new development. In a real sense, as far as many people are concerned, the world turned upside down with Mr. Barack Obama as the President of the United States. Now, what impact would that have on Africa, considering what are some of the current situations in reference to Africa, and the political situations in reference to Africa?
Well, in a brief overview,
sort of overview of what's going on in reference to
in Sudan, you still have the Darfur crisis, going on. People are still being killed, despite the fact that you have few UN and AU soldiers, so to speak, over there. Human rights are still being violated. And of course, the international human rights is in the process of indicting the Sudanese president, Omar Hassan al-Bashir, for human rights violations. In the Congo, the crisis continues. And in fact, in the past few years, over 3 million people have been killed in the Congo. That's very important. Most people don't even know.
It is.
Yeah, over 3 million people have been killed in the Congo. So the conflict continues. I mean, a few weeks ago, soldiers from Rwanda, went across the border to the Congo, supposedly at the invitation of the Congolese government to help them dislodge the Hutu rebels who are still making trouble in the Congo.
Since the last time in the 90s.
Exactly, who are still there. Supposedly they are retreating now, but as they move, they continue killing. In Uganda, you have the Lost Resistance Army, who've been beheading people and cutting arms and all that. They are still terrorizing people, in that neighborhood. In Sierra Leone, the situation, is calmer now, as been before. In Chad, there are problems. Sudanese-sponsored rebels from Darfur, are fighting in Chad to overthrow the government of President Idris Deby. And at the same time, Chad is sponsoring rebels to go and fight in Darfur. So you have areas of continuous conflict in Africa. On the other side, you have some success stories. Ghana has just completed a free and fair election in which the opposition won, something that's very rare on the continent. So that's good news. In Botswana, the economy is doing very well. Democracy is firmly implanted. Togo is peaceful, good investment climate. Angola is trying to rebuild, slowly but steadily, since the war ended. Mali is firmly on the road to democracy, even though people are still poor, but at least governmental infrastructures, are taking shape. So those are good news. Niger, the same thing. Niger has been peaceful and trying to pursue a democratic, way of doing business. Mozambique has been doing well. The economy has been growing since the war ended. And Renamo became part of the political process. And President Gebuza, who took over a few years ago from President Chisano, has continued to follow the same democratic process that seems to be taking shape, in Mozambique. In South Africa, after the resignation of President Mbeki, things are quieting down. The economy is still doing very well compared to its neighbors.
Okay.
Of course, in Zimbabwe, you had that last week, the opposition leader, Mr. Chongirai, formed a coalition government with Mr. Mugabe, and in order to try to alleviate the political situation. Now, most of the Western governments who had...
Dr. Madu, let me interrupt you here. Right at this point, dealing with the Western governments, for our first commercial break. And of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. The topic is the